everyone, welcome back. We're diving into something a little different today.
Yeah, general conference talk, actually. It's called Simply Beautiful, Beautifully Simple.
By Elder Gary E. Stevenson.
That's right. He gave it back in October 2021.
To a global audience of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Yeah.
But you know what?
What?
This one, it's got something for everyone, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
It's about this tension we all feel, right? Between how crazy the world is and needing these, like simple guiding principles.
Yeah, that pull between complexity and just wanting something straightforward. We can all relate to that.
Totally. So the talk has two main ideas.
Okay.
First are divinely appointed responsibilities.
Which I know sounds pretty specific, but stick with me here.
Yeah, they're about things we all kind of already know are important, like taking care of ourselves, helping others,
Yeah.
connecting with something bigger than ourselves.
Exactly. It's like he's giving us a roadmap.
Ooh, I like that.
Not for places, but for finding meaning.
Okay, I'm with you. And then the second big idea is how simple the core principles of the gospel are.
Think about it. The world's a mess. But this talk says the ways we can deal with it are surprisingly straightforward.
To show us this, he uses 4 stories, each one connected to one of those responsibilities.
Okay.
First story, living the gospel of Jesus Christ.
This is where we meet Jens from Denmark. Now, his story might seem a little out there, but just hear me out.
It involves a light bulb.
Yeah.
So Jens feels this super strong prompting to replace a burned out bulb
Okay.
in his utility room.
In the middle of dinner.
Right. But he listens to that feeling and heads to the store.
On his bike.
Yeah. And as he's riding, he sees something.
A little boy. Way too close to the edge of a pond.
And then the boy falls in.
Imagine if Jens had ignored that prompting, right? Just brushed it off.
He wouldn't have been there.
Exactly. But he was, and because of it, he jumps in and saves the boy's life.
Chills.
Yeah.
Just thinking about it.
It really makes you think, what if we're missing these kinds of things all the time?
Yeah.
Because we're just too busy.
So powerful. It's like that idea of mindfulness.
Being present.
Yeah. Not just, like meditating, but paying attention to those feelings we get.
Those little nudges we usually ignore.
Exactly. Even changing a light bulb can become something huge when we're paying attention.
Love that.
Okay, on to Colombia.
All right.
This one's about caring for those in need.
It's the story of 3 siblings who just lost their dad. And their mom had died just a year before.
Awful.
Just awful.
And on top of that, their home was rough.
Big walls made of scraps of wood.
Really?
Yeah, lined with plastic bags. The roof barely covered them.
Oh, wow.
Heartbreaking.
But then the community steps in.
It's amazing. Church leaders got involved, different groups and families, people pitched in whatever they could.
Time, labor, materials.
All of it. Even meals.
Wow. And it wasn't just charity, right?
It was about empowering these kids, not just a handout.
Yeah, some people even helped design and build them a new home.
It wasn't just a house. They built a support system.
Yeah.
A real lasting difference.
Makes you think. How can we be more proactive in helping those around us?
Right. It's not always about grand gestures. It's the small things that add up.
Yeah.
Especially when we do it together.
Okay, next stop. Cape Verde.
All right.
This is about inviting others to experience the gospel. We meet 17-year-old Clayton.
He and his mom and brother had actually been baptized earlier, but they'd stopped coming to church.
But then one day, Clayton walks back into seminary.
And the other youth welcome him, make him feel like he belongs.
And that changes everything.
It really does.
He starts coming back to church, getting involved, even becomes an assistant to the bishop.
Wow.
Then he invites his mom and brother back, then his friends.
Look at that ripple effect.
One of his friends, Wilson, is so touched he wants to be baptized right away.
Amazing how creating a welcoming space can do that, huh?
So powerful. Makes you wonder, how can we be more intentional about that?
In our own lives.
Yeah, at work in our neighborhoods, how can we make people feel seen, accepted, valued?
It doesn't have to be complicated either. Sometimes a smile is enough.
A listening ear, an invitation.
That's all it takes.
Last story takes us to Ukraine.
Okay.
This one's about uniting families for eternity. Now, before we get into it, you got to understand a little about Latter-day Saint beliefs.
They believe families can be together forever, even after death.
And the temple is super important for that.
It's where they do these special ceremonies. Baptisms, marriages.
Not just for themselves, but for their ancestors who've passed on.
Right.
So Lydia learns about this from the missionaries.
Okay.
And she's immediately drawn to the idea, starts getting ready to go to the temple.
Get to recommend.
Yeah. Attends the Freiburg, Germany temple for her own endowment. then spends days doing those ceremonies for her ancestors.
Proxy work.
Later, she and her husband are sealed in the Kyiv, Ukraine temple
Wow.
and get called to serve as temple missionaries. They've found over 15,000 names of their ancestors and done the temple work for them.
Wow. That's dedication.
But what's even more powerful is how Lydia describes how this changed her. It's been a journey for her.
Spiritually.
Yeah, personal evolution, a deeper capacity for love and service.
Her story really shows the power of connecting with our roots. Even if you don't share her beliefs, that desire to understand where we come from is so human.
Totally. It's about understanding our past and how it shapes us.
Have you ever explored your own family history? It's fascinating.
We've covered a lot, 4 stories, each tied to one of those divinely appointed responsibilities. And it's clear these principles can be applied in so many ways and lead to some pretty remarkable things.
They really can.
But before we jump ahead, let's look closer at how these stories connect back to that second big idea, the beautiful simplicity of the gospel.
It's a great point, because even though the stories are so different, they all show how powerful, simple core principles can be.
It's not about complexity.
It's about focusing on what truly matters.
And we'll unpack that more in the next part of our deep dive.
Stay tuned. It's so interesting how each of those stories, right, they're all unique,
Yeah.
but they kind of point to the same thing.
Yeah, like powerful change can come from embracing these simple core principles.
That's it, exactly. Not getting lost in the weeds, but focusing on what truly matters. And the talk does a great job of showing how that works in those, those divinely appointed responsibilities.
Yeah.
Like, let's go back to Jen's story for a second.
Okay.
He felt so strongly about changing that light bulb, even though it seemed like no big deal at the time.
And it turned out to be a really big deal.
Yeah. What's beautiful about it is that it wasn't some big, complicated thing, right? It was a simple act of just listening to that prompting, being present.
And look what happened because of it.
Exactly. A life was saved. It's like such a powerful way to show us how living the gospel can be about tuning into those little nudges, being open to inspiration, even when it shows up in unexpected ways.
And it doesn't have to be life or death situations, right?
No, not at all. It can be those little choices we make every day to align ourselves with those core principles. Kindness, compassion, service, faith, whatever it is that speaks to you. It's those little things that add up to create a life that reflects what we truly value.
Yeah, think about the story from Colombia. That situation those kids were facing was complicated. I mean, really complicated.
It was. So much need.
So few resources.
Absolutely. But what did the community do? They focused on one simple solution.
A safe and stable home.
That's it. They didn't try to fix everything at once. They focused on that core, need a place to live, and work together to make it happen.
And that's what's so cool about simplicity.
By breaking it down, focusing on that one need, they made a real difference, a lasting one. It's like that saying, how do you eat an elephant?
I don't know. How do you eat an elephant?
One bite at a time.
Love that.
Right. It's a good reminder that even with big challenges, we can find power in simple solutions. Instead of getting overwhelmed, ask yourself, what's one small thing I can do right now to make things better?
I love that. And Clayton's story from Cape Verde. It all started with a simple act of welcoming him back in. No arguments, no programs, just that sense of belonging.
Making him feel seen, accepted.
And look what happened. His life changed. He brought his family back. His friends joined one, even got baptized.
That ripple effect is amazing.
It makes you think sometimes the best way to invite others to share our values isn't through complicated things. It's about simple acts of kindness, connection, being genuine.
People are drawn to that. To people who live what they believe in a way that feels authentic.
It's about living our truth in a way that inspires others, not forcing it on them.
Exactly.
So we've seen how this idea of simplicity plays out in these different stories, but it's bigger than that, right? It's about simplifying our whole approach to life.
Oh, absolutely. The talk really challenges us to step back and look at our own lives. Ask ourselves, where am I making things more complicated than they need to be? What can I let go of? Where can I simplify?
It's so easy to get caught up in the busyness of life, feeling like we need to do more, achieve more, have more.
It really is.
Yeah.
And so we end up adding more to our plates instead of taking things off.
We fill our lives with distractions, anxieties, clutter.
It's like we're constantly climbing this mountain of complexity when maybe the path to a more fulfilling life is about finding a simpler way forward.
And that's what we're going to explore in the last part of our deep dive.
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll talk about practical ways to declutter,
Mm-hmm.
not just our homes and stuff, but our minds, our schedules, even our priorities. It's about rediscovering the beauty and power of simplicity, how it can lead us to a life that feels more authentic, more joyful, more meaningful.
Welcome back. So, we've explored these stories. We've seen how, even when things are complex, there's this real power in keeping things simple.
Right.
And now, the big question, right? How do we actually do that?
How do we make this work in our own lives?
Yeah, because it's so easy to feel overwhelmed, right?
Right,
There's
exactly.
so much coming at us all the time.
Information overload demands on our time distractions everywhere. And we often think the answer is to add more productivity hacks, more self-improvement strategies, more stuff.
Yeah, it's like more, more, more.
But what this talk says, what if it's actually about less?
Simplifying.
Yeah,
So instead of adding a what if we let go of some things, decluttered not just our stuff, but our minds and schedules too.
that's exactly it.
Mm-hmm.
Prioritize what truly matters and get rid of the rest,
Hmm.
the stuff that's weighing us down.
So where do we start?
Well, a good place to begin is with our core values.
Okay.
Think of them like a compass, those things that give our lives meaning and purpose.
Kind of like those divinely appointed responsibilities we talked about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Whether we see them through a religious lens or not, they can help us make choices that line up with what we believe in. It's about figuring out what matters most to you.
Okay, so once we've got that figured out, then we can start to simplify our schedules and commitments.
Right. It might mean saying no more often to social events, to extra projects, learning to set boundaries.
Because it's so easy to get stuck in that feeling of being busy. Like we have
Yeah.
to say yes to everything.
But remember Jens's story.
With the light bulb.
Yeah, sometimes the smallest choices make the biggest difference.
If he'd said no to that prompting, he wouldn't have been there to save that boy.
So it's about making space for what truly matters,
Yeah.
even if it means saying no to some other things.
And then there's our mental space.
Oh, yeah. We got to declutter our minds, too.
Big time.
There are so many ways to do this. Mindfulness meditation, even just being in nature.
Anything to quiet that constant mental chatter.
Exactly. Create some peace and clarity.
Yeah.
And that brings us back to Jens again. Remember how he was able to hear that quiet prompting about the light bulb?
Yeah.
When we declutter our minds, we can hear those little nudges, those whispers of intuition.
It's like we're tuning out the noise to hear the signal.
Exactly.
And then, of course, there's our physical space.
Decluttering our homes, our workspaces.
Makes a huge difference.
It really does. Think about how good it feels to walk into a clean, organized room.
It's calming.
It is. Getting rid of clutter can have a big impact on how we feel.
So what does all this mean? How does simplifying lead to a more fulfilling life?
For one thing, it frees up space for what's important.
More time and energy for the people and things we love.
We're less stressed, less overwhelmed. We can be more present.
And we're more open to inspiration and intuition, which can lead to those unexpected opportunities that make life so interesting.
Right.
This isn't about deprivation. It's not about living some minimalist lifestyle. It's about making choices, choosing to align our lives with our values.
It's about finding beauty in the ordinary, joy in the simple things, being grateful for what we have.
That's beautifully said. So as we wrap up this deep dive, we'll leave you with this. What areas of your life could use a little simplifying? What could you let go of to make space for what truly matters?
It's a journey for sure,
Mhm.
but even small steps towards simplicity can make a big difference.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it insightful and maybe even feel inspired to embrace a little more simplicity in your own life.